Leo, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
The whole world has changed since we last had you on the show. I should have looked as to when that was, but you were living in Sydney, I think, at the time, or had you moved up to Queensland?
I was still in Sydney at the time. I think it was during the pandemic, wasn't it?
It must have been, yeah.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, because I moved just after the borders opened and I was already in Australia. So yeah, it's a whole new world right now.
Sure is. And one thing even back then, you were very much a software engineer that was currently working in the Salesforce world. You weren't necessarily a Salesforce developer per se. That was, what you did, but you were much broader. You had a much broader appreciation for technology. But even back then, you were saying that was important. Like, people need to look beyond the platform. And fast forward to today, I know you're building agents. You're building agents within the world of Salesforce. How did you go from being a Salesforce developer to now being an AI focused engineer?
I think already at the time I was just considering where I was sitting, and I was still working in sales, but kind of like trying to make a move, trying to go gather more experience with different technology. And I went and I did a bit of 2 years of open banking work, and just built an open banking SaaS here in Australia. That company got fired, and then I started working for myself. I think the general goal of looking beyond technology and acquiring different skills was stay there. And I'm still the kind of person who is looking like where's technology is going. And then I think you talk about this idea of your personal brand. Like, I work in a Salesforce system. It doesn't mean I do only Salesforce work. Like, I can come in and offer a different way of looking at things, offer a different way of just looking beyond Apex, LWC, and the old conversations of flow versus Apex configuration or code. I think those conversations are important, but I bring other things to the table. I'm also like, oh, you need to build something. Let's build off the platform, because you don't need this workload on the platform, and you are going to be able to free up either internal product resources, your Salesforce specialist. And because I know the platform really well, I can have that conversation that goes from talking to somebody who's an AWS specialist or talking to a Salesforce specialist. I can play that role. And I build a personal brand around being a specialist in Salesforce that can use multiple technologies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then, so I guess in terms of, like, if we talk AI engineering in the world of Salesforce, what does that actually mean right now? Like, what's possible? What's being done from an AI engineering space within Salesforce?
I think I'd like to answer that question. I think there's two levels, like what's possible in engineering with AI and what's possible with Salesforce. I think this person's called Simon Willis, and he's a famous iPhone developer and an AI researcher. He has a really cool blog that he publishes a lot about like his experience with different models, how AI is evolving, his thoughts. And I think he came up with, he used that term called agentic engineering. I'm not sure if he's the person who created that term, but the idea is that as you're thinking or developing your app or your system, you have these agents available working for you. And these agents accelerate what you're able to do and give you an ability to take a step back and work at a higher level of abstraction, instead of like thinking of like, even thinking of a very silly, simple term, like, will I use this choice of a design pattern or this choice of design system for like your front end, or this one or that one. Instead, you're just thinking, you know what, I am going to kick off like 5 agents and then show me how it would look with 5. So you get much more accelerated. And as a result, you work at a higher level. And I think in engineering in general, that's possible. Like, so you are going to, evaluate, should I use this I work a lot with Python. So will I use, for my backend, I'm going to use Fast API, Django, or Flask. You know what, I'll pick off 3 agents and I'll say, create it here for me because I want to look at the trade-offs, and let's talk about the trade-offs. Then I look at code that I'm going to have to maintain, and then make basically choices based on what I'm looking at. So, and I think the same applies to Salesforce. Like, in terms of agentic engineering, you're able to move a lot faster. You're able to do a lot more. You're able to move in a pace that it would be completely not realistic in the past. that means you can develop solutions differently. It means you have to think of how you're going to design like your system in ways that, you weren't used to, just because even the speed, you're like, if I do this, okay, I can do all of this week, which would be 3 months worth of work in the past. But what are the consequences long term? So you're basically thinking at a different level. Instead of sitting here, you're kind of sitting here and you're just managing decisions that sit under you.
So it's interesting that that point around, because I, as someone that uses AI, like I use Claude to kind of to help me think and solve a problem, right? So if I go to it and say, right, these are the options I'm thinking of, obviously not being a developer, I say, like, what would you recommend, or like, play this role and what would you recommend? But you're saying you would use the agents to actually go and do the 3 different options for you, rather than asking Claude or something to give you the answer and then going with that route. You're actually using them to go away and here are 3 options, go and do it those 3 different ways, and then I'll make the decision based on what I see.
Yeah, that's essentially how I work. And I would generally have, when I'm actually developing, I'm working with 3 or 5 agents at the same time. 3 to 5, I find that more than 5, I start getting really tired. And then instead of having a full work day, I end up having half a day and I'm like, I'm really done. I need to get out of here because I'm thinking too much. But I find, because like as an engineer, I am still responsible for how I deliver, but I'm not only responsible for how I deliver, I'm responsible for how I maintain, and I want to understand what I'm going to maintain. So I know not everyone works like this, and I'll add a note to this to say that I work with different people, work in completely different ways with AI. There are people that don't even look at AI and have the AI outputs and that say, if the test works, it's fine. I'm not able to do that. I still feel very responsible for what I do. But I find important for me to understand what I'm doing, and having the agents as a bit of like a sparring partner in building a solution. And I have again, I don't know who to attribute this to, and do not attribute it to me. But once I heard this idea of like friction and struggle, are you familiar with this concept? So the idea would be like, let's say you are going to, I don't know, build a solution. You're going to build an integration with, you're going to build a chat app in Salesforce to help you, to have your customers, like you're going to expose it through a community and a digital experience site. And you're going to have like a little chat window and you're trying to decide how you're going to do it. So you have this idea of friction and struggle, where friction are the external things that keep you from moving. And struggle is the internal fight of you trying to decide what is the best path. What I find with AI is that AI will very happily take both from you. You can say, implement this for me, and you don't struggle with it. You don't have any internal thoughts. You're happy with the AI decisions. You're basically offloading your thinking. When you think of friction is like, oh, what's the most available API partner that I can use? Or will I use Anthropic or OpenAI? Does it matter? Will I use a local or I wouldn't even call that fast part of friction. Like part of friction, I need an API key and I need approval from my manager, and my manager is on holiday, so I can't move. Because I think figuring out the right partner is actually more in the struggle. Kind of like internally thinking what you want. Like friction are like things that basically slow you down, and they're busy work. And with AI, I find really important to offload the friction, but not the struggle. Keep the struggle to yourself, because I feel like that's the thing. I'm a firm believer, and I say believer because we don't know what's going to happen, but in terms of the future of engineering, the engineers who struggle will continue to be relevant. The engineers who don't struggle, your engineering mind is going to start atrophying. You're not going to be thinking of code. You're not going to be looking at technical solutions and struggling and wondering what the right decision is.
Yeah, I met up with a developer I just placed this week, and he was saying, look, I've written so much code over the years that I'm not excited by writing code anymore. I'm excited by solving the problem. So I want to solve it once and then let AI run that multiple times again. So I'm not having to repeat what I'm doing over and over again. I've built so many Lightning Web components that I don't want to just keep doing the same thing over and over. I'm excited by the challenge. Is that the soul? Is that the struggle, right? It's the part where you're using your brain to solve the problem and not just relying on outsourcing that.
I think that is part of the struggle, but I also think part of the struggle is like, will I use Anthropic? And if I use Anthropic, will I use Opus or Sonnet, and why? Like understanding, like, if you're considering a local model because you have privacy concerns, are you going to use Quen? And if you use Quen, are you going to use Quen 3.6 27B or 35B A3B? Like, I might just sing like worse than like I'm pretty sure, like not pretty sure, but like you said you're not as familiar with like local different, like, will I use a Chinese model or Western model and why? Like those are like real trade-offs, and like why are you choosing? Like, and I think that's also part of the struggle. There's technical struggle as well, because and I do agree, like if you're just writing the same lighting components, it's all of the same thing. You're not really thinking, you're like, I can do this, like I know what I want. That I'm very glad that AI can do that for me, because I'm like, I've struggled with this so much that is like, it's busy work.
So you say like you work with up to 5 agents to solve these problems. Like how much work went into getting these agents into a position where they can be a assistant for you?
It depends. It depends on the category of problem. It depends, like, for example, for code bases that I work with, just Claude. Claude is like my main agent, agentic system that I basically use to work with clients. Like most of my agent work with Claude has been approved. It's like either through Bedrock, so it's here in actually, I'm not sure if I'm not gonna say that if Bedrock is fully hosted in Australia, but anyways, it's been approved. So most of my work is like in Claude is very, it was like it was many months of figuring out not even how to set up Claude correctly, but figuring out what my flow is. And I think it goes back to that idea of everyone that works with AI works with it differently. So if I'm working with Claude, I have a very specific way that I basically try different things. And I'm like, I found that myself working with very close problems, for example, like if I'm changing two things in a specific user interface, and it's very much like on the same page, it's very close together, start convoluting things. So it, for me, works better if I'm like, problem one goes here, problems two, and they are two separate things. So I can like switch between the two. And then again, I won't say that I work with like also 5 agents that are fully like developing code for me, because sometimes I have one agent doing research that is informing the other agents. So I try like to find it, and it took me like, yeah, it took me probably like up to a year to figure out what my flow was. And basically, I just watched a lot of videos of how people do it, talk to people. Just I went to, very lucky where I live, because about 10 minutes from here, there is a place called the Puritan Digital Hub, and they have an AI practice. They really want to advance AI in Southeast Queensland. And they basically talk, if you have, by the way, if you happen to be in Southeast Queensland, the Puritan Digital Hub has a meetup for AI. So that's a really good place for you to learn AI. Basically go and observe and talk to people, and then be like, try this and let me try that. So that's for Claude. If I'm working with local agents, I tend to prefer to actually just have one. And the local agents generally don't perform as well. They're not as good. They're like not frontier yet. They're not frontier level capabilities, which means I have to be a lot more hands-on. And I purposely do that because I like not losing that technical muscle. I like exercising that technical muscle. So if I'm doing basically local, I'm like, okay, let's do it. And using natural language, I'm saying, let's do this first, and let's do this first, let's do this second, let's do this third.
What's your view? I know you've not done much in terms of delivery with Agentforce, but what's your view on it now? It's gone through lots of different releases, iterations. But yeah, in terms of the maturity of Agentforce from what you've seen, what you've observed, what would be your comment?
I think this is an opinion of somebody who hasn't developed an Agentforce yet, and so take that with a grain of salt. So take that into account as I explain. But I see Agentforce being very much a flavor of how things are built in Salesforce. So Salesforce is a managed platform. So when you use a managed platform, you're trading something off, right? If you are going to build a Salesforce, your own CRM in AWS, you can make the choices all yourself and can be exactly what you want it to be, which means you have a lot more headache. headaches and basically more things to think about. Like you're managing the infrastructure, you're managing the uptime. Salesforce takes a lot of things from you as a platform. I think the same applies with Agentforce. Agentforce has a lot of choices that were made by Salesforce to say, this is our take on agentic, enterprise agentic system or the enterprise agentic solutions. And that will come with the downsides of somebody else making the choices for you. You have a lot of benefits, but you also have downsides. Like, so if you want to try to do something that is like frontier anthropic equivalent, you can't. Or you might hit a platform limit that Salesforce purposely established because they have to manage that platform for billions of customers. In Salesforce, not a platform that is sit at the frontier. It's an enterprise platform that is made for specifically for those clients that don't want to think about security. They don't like most Salesforce clients are not using Salesforce because they want to sit at the frontier of technology for their CRM. They want a managed platform, so they don't have to think of certain things that Salesforce make the decision for them. And I think that's a completely valid choice. So yeah, I think Agentforce is a flavor of that, as it has been with many solutions of Salesforce. Like if I look at Apex, they took Java. They're like, oh, that's our flavor. This is what we think it should be like. Having said all this, I do think Salesforce always will move on to what the industry is going, but it doesn't always maintain well what's been built. If in a few years Salesforce decides like, oh, we're not going to invest in Agentforce anymore because the next industry trend is X, and AI might be still evolving. I doubt that's going to be the case, but imagine a world that AI doesn't evolve as much anymore, as fast, or is not as hype anymore, or not as relevant. Salesforce could move on, and Agentforce as a product might not move if Anthropic and OpenAI. So yeah, I think you use Agentforce because you're looking for an enterprise solution interpret through the lens of the Salesforce leadership.
When a customer comes to you, or like the customers you're working with now, and you've got a problem that could be solved by Agentforce, what are the considerations when you're doing something off platform then? Like, why is it the maintainability? Like if is it easier to maintain something long term if it's on Salesforce than off platform?
Depends on what lens you look at. And like if you think of, like if a client comes to me and says like, I want to build this. First of all, like look, who do you have in your team? Do you have anyone to maintain it in Salesforce? That's probably a good thing if it's built on Salesforce. And that is not just Agentforce. Like look at your team, look who you have. So let's imagine you don't have it. Like if you hire somebody who's an external, imagine if I was an Agentforce specialist, suppose in the other in the other role in that position. You're like, okay, I can build this in Agentforce for you, but you either hire somebody who can do this, or you're going to have to hire an external consultant to be maintaining this. And I think that's where a technology that is not Agentforce, that is not a Salesforce technology, is really good, because it's easier to find a person who is a specialist on Python or something like Agentic AI, which is a relatively new, I think it's a year-old library to build agents, or even somebody who's a specialist on the OpenAI API, than an Agentforce specialist. So it really depends. The client, I think I would then recommend the client, look, if you want that capability, if you're not willing to hire and pay a premium, it might be better if you put this elsewhere. So I think it's really much like the kind of company I'm working with and the kind of like teams and stuff. What I find is that people who invest a lot of money in Salesforce, they won't hire Salesforce people because they're spending so much in Salesforce anyways. And they are saving in not having to worry about security and running your own platform. Like not running things in Salesforce also has a cost. Like you can be a differentiator. Yes, you can use technology that in many ways is more pleasant for the developer, but then like you're more vulnerable for supply chain attacks. Just I think last couple of months, there were a lot of supply chain attacks that somebody took either an NPM package or a Python package that was hosted in pip, or even the cloud code source leaked, and it wasn't even a supply chain attack, it was a human error. So like once you have once you have to do the other side that is not in Salesforce, then you're vulnerable to other things. In the case of Cloud Code, that's your IP. So like now anyone can build a Cloud Code, and that actually happened. I think a few people built like a Cloud Code in Rust. Or let's dissect the Cloud Code and understand how they build it. And that's like Anthropic losing a competitive advantage, because if their Cloud Code is much better than everything else because of how they build it, that's a human error that if you're building things in Salesforce, you don't really have to worry.
Mm-hmm.
It's all trade-offs. I think as you get older, you realize that in life, at work, but also in life, you're just trade-off.
Yeah, 100%. And I know, like when AI, from my lens of the Salesforce market, started taking shape, everyone was talking about data architecture, and that being a big blocker in terms of actually getting value from AI. In your experience, is data the problem? And if so, how are you solving that with your customers?
A couple of layers to that question, because first of all, I don't think having bad data is a blocker in using AI. I think there is a blocker in using AI that depends on good data, right? I think, for example, nothing keeps you, I don't know, like I was talking to somebody a couple of weeks ago that they are building a local agent for privacy reasons that just classifies their emails, the inbound emails, and writes the draft for the human to go and actually adjust and set. You don't need good data for that. You just need a good machine. In their case, if you're using a cloud agent, a cloud service, you don't even need a computer. In their case, you need a computer, you need the skills to build it, and a human to go and actually look at those drafts. So that is completely data independent. And I think my approach with all my clients has been like, let's see where we can use AI. Like, what's their low hanging fruit? Where are you wasting a lot of time? I think what I noticed with AI, I've had a few conversations with that. I noticed people were like, oh, our goal with AI is X, while people are spending time on very like busy work that could just be automated with using AI. And be like, you know what? Build either a cloud code or a cloud desktop skill, or they have this new thing called routines, which seems interesting, that you can automate that part of your work. Or like, you freed up your work. What can you do with that? And then you kind of build your building blocks, but you don't start your building blocks with good data. And I've actually had you don't keep yourself from building or from creating good building blocks just because you don't have good data. I also think that because of AI, it is possible for you to live a lot with bad data if you create solutions that can automate away some of the problems with bad data. And what I mean by that, let me give you a concrete problem. Have a client that for a deployment, they do record-based deployment based on like you create records in the system in Salesforce, and that you can kick off what we call a recipe, which is like a deployment recipe to say, oh, this is what we're going to deploy. And there was a lot of conversations about recipes being duplicated. So like, which recipe do you use? We need to clean up the data. Agree. We need to clean up the data. Data, no one should have to live with bad data, because it's annoying. Like, it's the whole idea of like broken windows. You look at a neighborhood with a broken window, you have this feeling that is not really taken care of, and then you just throw your rubbish on the street because it doesn't really matter. No one cares. So I don't think you should have to live with bad data. But I just created like a simple script pre-deployment that does the deduplication of records before you deploy, so you don't try to deploy the same thing twice. That solves one problem. It doesn't address the data problem, but it addresses the problem that bad data causes in one instance, and that's one win that you can have. So focus on the small wins. Don't focus on fixing the data, even for you to learn how to work with AI, because you are gonna, like, you as an organization, like code and organizations evolve, but technology evolves, and it never really evolves in the direction that you always think it's gonna go, and that's okay. Like, you don't need. It's the whole waterfall. You don't need to plan everything before and try something.
hmm It's interesting like that because I guess it's an education piece, right? In terms of like customers coming to you with this like big vision of what they want to achieve. Are you finding that customers are? Is it like often a time saving thing that people want, or is it a reduction? Like obviously, I know you're speaking to a select few customers, but are they talking like headcount disruption, or are they talking about time saving and enabling staff?
And so far, I haven't had conversations of headcount reduction. Like it's always been like, oh, how can we free up our people to do more interesting stuff? And our product could be better, our teams could be better. I haven't had a single instance of somebody saying, oh, we really need to save, therefore let's invest in AI.
hmm
Yeah,
Yeah,
at least that's my case so
which
far.
is interesting, right? Because you see these big companies letting people go and saying, "Oh, look, it's because of the AI wave," and like with yeah, it's so yeah, it's interesting. That's the message at the big level.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's really funny. I saw this it was this video that was shared with me. I didn't actually watch all of it, but this idea that AI almost became people are talking about AI as almost a religion where people like have like really strong beliefs, and then some people say one thing and the other person says one thing. It's like it's almost religious. Like it's not evidence based. It's not like I've noticed that I had conversations with people that they had really strong opinions. I'm like, that's not what we're experiencing right now, right? And they're like, yeah, but it's funny. This sentence, yes, but it's almost like, yes, I'm agreeing with you, but my beliefs are so strong that your argument doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And to be fair, like there's so much fear mongering, and like what's gonna happen, This is awful. Like and like you get worried when you think about it a lot. So it is hard. Like and I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. Maybe the market will be completely disrupted, but it's not something I've experienced. I haven't been in a situation that I'm like, oh, everyone's getting fired. But for that matter, AI made me busier, not less busy. So
hmm
I have a lot more to do than I used to have just because I have to manage all these agents doing stuff.
Yeah, and easier to manage than people, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, in many ways they are. No, they are. They don't complain to me. The only problem is that they are too eager. They just go.
Yeah. Have
Yeah.
any of them had a sick day yet?
No, they haven't had a sick day. No, they crash my computer every now and then. At that, they get
Yeah.
angry. They're like, "We're done."
Yeah, yeah. So Salesforce hosted MCP server support is pretty new. What's your view on what that will unlock for engineers and what's going to be possible now compared to before?
I am of the opinion, and I could be wrong again, but I am of the opinion that it doesn't necessarily unlock that much. It just lowers the bar. If I, for myself, right, as somebody who works with Salesforce, I have the Salesforce CLI installed. I can work technically with Salesforce. I can tell my Cloud Code and say, use the Salesforce CLI with these commands, and then it will get the Salesforce data that I want. And because I'm technical, I can tell that to Cloud, and I can be very specific. A non-technical person does not have that ability. So I think the Salesforce MCP server will lower the bar of what's possible for the non-technical person, or the person who doesn't feel as comfortable doing that. But it doesn't unlock necessarily great new capabilities. It's like, oh, one more thing. Like it's not like you can get your Cloud to go and talk to Salesforce to do stuff for you. But it's not like, I don't find it that like revolutionary. It's like a time savings thing. In the end of the day, like AI is very much about the questions you asked. The questions you asked, the direction working with that intuition and taste and figuring out what should you get Cloud to do, than necessarily, yeah, the tools you have, if that makes sense.
Do you think like so? I know like deployments as an example now, rather than having people doing deployments, you can have like I know that's a major frustration for a lot of people that they don't love that world of kind of DevOps and delivery. Is the deployment time and things like that. Do you think that's just going to be an art that disappears in terms of like having that done for you rather than having to manage deployments yourself now?
Good question. I think it depends on the situation. I have a few thoughts, so I can share them with you, and then we'll see where this will end. Because one aspect is the nature of the technology is not great. Like deployments in Salesforce are slow. Like if I need to do a Python application deployment, it's just literally like a few seconds and it's deployed, and it's generally very easy to deploy. So there is the fact that technology is hard to work with. But AI is a tool that augments your capability. So if you are very incompetent in something, you're going to be magnified in your incompetence. So you might get yourself find yourself making terrible things very fast and for like a very sustainable, ultra productive ways. All that to say is, if you don't know how to deploy, you don't know how to do DevOps, you don't know the DevOps culture, you don't know the basics of like observing your system, monitoring your system, alerting your teams, making sure that your build is good, you're just going to get more of the bad parts of doing deployments. The same way, if you are very strong on the DevOps side, you are going to be magnified as well. Like all of that will be, all your productivity will increase. So I don't think the AI itself, the AI doesn't remove the problem. It magnifies whatever your competence levels are. And I have a very interesting exercise that sometimes I like to do. I get non-technical people to say, I need you to write an app. Just describe the app. Let's do this. Let's sit with Cloud Code and I just watch. And then like the way the person asks the questions, especially a person that doesn't spend a lot of time in the computer, it's really interesting because they're like, you're not thinking about the technical details that I'm thinking of. And Claude might say, oh, I'll make that decision for you. But that decision that Claude made has a consequence. It's a trade-off. Every decision is a trade-off. And then if you have a roadmap and things you have to maintain, you are going to have to maintain the decision that Claude made. How do you know that's a good decision? So AI will magnify your competence, but also your incompetence. And that applies to me. There are certain things that I'm terrible at, like I'm terrible at front end. Sometimes I need to touch a few things that I'm like, I'm going to get somebody to look at this because I'm actually not able to say the UI works, but that's not enough, right? That's just one layer. So that's one aspect that I think is really important. The other aspect is that AI also can very easily, even going back to that idea of friction and struggle, because AI is so good at doing stuff, and at least in terms of like what it outputs, at what surfaces, at what you see, you basically can lose your incentive to be better. You're like, why would I learn this if I can get like? And I don't know if you ever got asked that question, and I feel like that question drives me crazy. Why would I do this? Why would I learn this if AI can do it for me? And there's a lot of reasons why you would learn a lot of stuff, right? You might choose you don't want to learn stuff. Like that's completely fair. But to say, I'm not going to learn anything anymore because it doesn't matter. Like again, you're offloading your struggle. How are you going to be a competent engineer when this thing makes a decision for you that creates a bug that really affects your customers quietly for months or years? And then you're like, I need to go back and fix this. And how do I fix this mess? And I think in a world where software is abundant, the cost of switching is going to be very low. And customers are going to be like, you know what? I'm done. I don't want to work at Leo. Look at the stuff he builds for me. Like, I'm done. I'm stepping away. And I don't want people to talk like that about me.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that I've had this discussion a few times, like raising children now. How do you encourage them to think in a world of AI, right? Rather than, and it's the same problem. Like it's the same thing. It's like you're talking engineers. It's the same challenge, right? It's like if the ability just to have something think for you is there, how do you maintain that willingness and desire to learn and to think yourself?
Yeah. No, that's completely fair. And like, I should maintain a habit of mine is to either, it depends on the week, half a day to 1 day a week, almost religiously, I code by hand. And people might be like, no, it's a waste of time. Like, it's one thing to produce content and to consume content. When you're consuming code somebody wrote, that's a good skill. That's a really important skill. But only the people who produce I really be a believer, if you produce, you're better at consuming. Same thing, like I'm doing I'm doing a workbook called AI by hand, which basically is like the maths behind the AI that you just do it by hand. Like, is that going to give me great skills? Like in terms of working with AI, I'm never going to calculate by hand what AI does. Like that's never going to be possible for any human, but that keeps the skill alive. That keeps my brain working.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like what like through what you've just said, it's really important that managers and companies understand the difference between AI assisted and AI dependent code, right? Like anyone now can have AI dependent code. Like I can go and get Claude to write a piece of code for me, but it's actually the AI assisted code that people should be considering, not the dependent code, because like you said, I can't deploy. I've got no idea what Claude has written for me. I've got no idea to pressure test that and to know if it's good quality. And I think that's the important thing moving in. Like you said, it's going to amplify good and bad in people. You actually do still need that foundational software engineering skill set to know what's right and wrong. And I think that's one thing that people really need to focus on moving forward is like, just because someone can write some code with a piece of software or, with some help from AI doesn't necessarily mean that they should be writing that piece of code.
Yeah, I completely believe that. And I was thinking and kind of like journaling and just wondering in my head, where are we going? And I think of, in a way, engineering is going to become almost like decay gatekeeping, like in this idea, like in physics of entropy. For whatever reason, in our universe, everything moves towards chaos. So everything's gets more chaotic, and we experience that every day. Like I feel like I experience that. And I just clean my house. My kids make it really messy the moment they walked home. You experience that at work, like you work in an organization grows, things get messier. You get older, your body doesn't work as well. Like we are always moving towards disorder. This happens on more molecular level, but that happens in our reality. And I don't know why the way we experience our reality is like this, but that's our code bases. That is our products, and our products are moving towards decay. We are, as engineers, we're gatekeeping that decay. We are like, let's bring order. Let's make sure that this is sustainable because we can move at a speed that is very hard to maintain. What are the choices that we're going to make in a world where code is cheap? We can produce as much as we can, but verification is not. And customers might not want all the features. They might just want 5 features that work. And you have 100 features, and out of those 100, they work about 70% of the time. Like feature bloat and like just thinking like long-term as an organization, what do you want to maintain? And I'm sure every engineer before AI or everyone who did the product makes choices that they are like, I wish I hadn't released this. But now everyone is using it and I have a contract saying that I'm going to maintain it. And then you're stuck with it for a very long time. So I do think like keeping the decay becomes a lot more important. Like before, like your product person comes and says, we should build this. And then your question should be like, even to yourself, should I really build this? Do we really need this? Do we want to maintain this?
Mm-hmm. So I was going to say, what do you see in, like, say, 3 years' time? What does a Salesforce engineer look like? Do you think it will evolve that quickly that is the role of an engineer? It's the gatekeeper. It's the, this does or doesn't meet our standards and expectations, and I make that decision, but I'm not necessarily like spending most of my time writing the code anymore.
I do think it does feel like that's where engineering is going. I do think there is a lot of like, again, with this idea that AI is almost religious, that like people are either fully against AI or fully pro AI. And I think that pendulum eventually is going to find a level of balance. And then we're going to find that it's actually important to maintain our technical skills. And I think it's important to not just fully delegate, but I do believe that most of our work will be AI generated. I will say, like, I don't know if we are going to be talking about Salesforce engineers or just engineers in general. Already a few years ago when we first spoke, I was never a fan of being like a Salesforce engineer, but an engineer who does Salesforce. I think that's probably where people who are successful are going. And I think like our role in many ways is going to be much more like a PM, because you need to understand what you're building. Like you're going to release something, like are people going to like it? Like I think in that sense, I feel very blessed that I work with tooling and a lot of like very technical, I guess, audiences. And as a result, I can very much imagine myself in the eyes and like in the customer side and be like, okay, this is what I think I would want. I think this is a good feature. Depending on the industry you work, like I don't know if you're doing, I'm not going to mention an industry because I don't want to offend anyone, but let's say you don't care about the industry you're working as much, but you're like understanding your industry becomes more important, becoming that specialist. And I do think roles are kind of blending in a way where where PMs can produce code. I don't think it's necessarily bad that a PM can produce code. I think it's bad if it lands in production and no one looked at it. But if the engineers are really busy, the PM can write a prototype and then can hand it to an engineer. I think that's great. So the engineer goes more towards the PM goes more towards the engineer. The graphic designer person comes closer, and the other go closer to the designer as well. So I think we're all kind of moving towards the middle.
Yeah, interesting. And your LinkedIn headline describes you as an aspiring AI alignment researcher. What's drawn you to that side of AI, and how does that shape how you think about what you're building day to day?
I think first of all, like it's really interesting that we as humanity build this incredible technology that's basically alien intelligence. Like I saw somebody calling it alien intelligence because there's nothing like this, like that is both extremely smart, but then goes like completely offside. And then you have days that it works really well, and then you give it the wrong prompt, and then it doesn't work, and you're like, oh. And like, it's funny because I was really, like the other day I was really sleepy. I was driving, I had to drive for a really long time. And I turned on Claude and we were just like having a chat about like a product feature that I was building. I was like, oh, help me think of this, just really calm. But then I was like, oh, wow, I drove for 45 minutes and I talked to this thing that is not a human, but is talking and has a voice enabled through technology. So it's like really interesting technology. And then the alignment piece, I think it's probably like a strategic career decision, because I do think that humans will always be very, very important. It's a crucial role to understand if the AI is well aligned in terms of not going off roads. Like I know a lot of people like have heard a lot of conversations, a lot of like worries about like, what if AI becomes conscious? Like scientifically speaking, like researchers don't always agree what consciousness is. So we are afraid of this thing that is like a bit fuzzy, like we don't quite know how to describe, that it almost sits more in a philosophical / religious realm. Whereas alignment is like a mathematically speaking, like it is possible for the AI to misalign. And there's a lot of evidence that suggests that AI is misaligned, and they try to hide their behavior when they're misaligned. So there's a lot of research around that area. And I do think research in this is both fascinating, but also a career move, because being able to be a specialist who can go and like help an organization that uses AI for reaching whatever goals they have, and just being like, I can help you essentially monitor your system, test your system, observe your system, which is, I guess, in many ways the next level of observability practice of like, these are confidence levels working with this thing. Yeah, both a fascination, but as well as a strategic career move that I think will always be not only always and very relevant. And to add to that, there's a lot of maths involved, and I think I really enjoy maths.
Mm-hmm. In terms of career guidance and advice, like if you were a relatively traditional Salesforce developer, right? So you're working on platform, you've kind of not your business that you're working with aren't really exploring or enabling you to explore the world of AI. What are some really simple ways for people to kind of start thinking about ways that they can use this as part of their workflow, and some basic ways of getting set up to start seeing the value?
I think a couple of things. I think my advice from a few years ago didn't change. I think you need to look beyond the platform. Don't just look in Salesforce, just go in, like, if you have the time, the privilege of having time, go in a weekend and build something using a different framework. Just see what's out there, because seeing what's out there gives you ideas. It unlocks your mind in ways that you don't even consider to think before you understand there are other ways. So that hasn't changed. I still recommend to people go and try something else. The other aspect is, again, it is a position of privilege that not everyone can do this, but I recommend you getting a good computer to try if you want to explore the world of local AI, because it's really interesting and you really can understand a lot more how things work. It is true, like, I don't know if you heard it before, but this idea that like no one truly understand how AI works, and that is true. But we are also the people who design the algorithm that trains the AI. So there is a lot to understand. It's not like everything is a black box and we have no idea. And this thing is like, no, there is a process of making these things, and there is also people that have a hypothesis of how we are going to be able to reverse it and understand. So it's not like completely like binary choice. We either fully understand it or we don't understand. So if you are in a position that you can maybe put some money into it and get a good computer and try it on a good machine, doesn't have to be like the best possible machine, but a good computer, I think that might be interesting. In terms of what else in career advice, I would say don't offload your career to an AI. Like, just yes, try it, but don't stop coding altogether. Continue exercising the muscles that you work really, really hard to obtain. And whatever muscle that is, it doesn't have to be coding. Like, it can be business analysis. It can be like, I'm sure, Ben, you could very easily create an AI that emails and like does the finds the candidates, classifies them. But that's like that thing that you have that you're like, I'm going to find a good candidate for that company. Don't offload that to an AI. So that's a really important thing in your career. So trying to figure out what I'm going to offload, what part of my friction is going to go away, but what part of my struggle is going to continue being mine.
Yeah, nice. Well, thank you so much. Always a pleasure, and always gets me thinking when we have you on the show. So thank you again. And if anyone does want to reach out, and other than coming to the AI hub in Queensland, where can they find you? Like, where's the best way to hit you up?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Can email me, but that's probably the best place to find me at Leo or Leo at azl.au. And we're happy to have a chat, happy to nerd out about AI anytime.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ben.